You'll observe in the Torah something, an observation that I made several years ago. If you look at the way that kids are named in the Torah, some of the kids, up until in the beginning part of the Torah, the kids are named by the mothers for events that took place after the mother's life. So if you take a look at all the tribes, they're all named by the mothers after the events that took place in their life, or to reflect some sort of emotion that took place or that they're thinking. So in the Reuven, Ra, Hashem, Ba'anya, Kadosh Baruch Hu saw the pain that I was in, so he gave me a child, so on and so forth. Every single child is named by the mother to reflect the mother's being. There are a couple exceptions where, for example, Yitzchak was another, not an exception. He was actually named after the fact that Sarah, his mother, laughed. So yet again, it's after something that took place in the mother's life. Yaakov is, is not particularly named after the mother, but certainly up until in the beginning part of the Torah, you never find that a father names a child, and certainly you don't find anything that names after something that happened in his life. And suddenly, in the transition takes place in Egypt, where the person who does the first transition is by Yosef Atzadik, where he names his two children, and Ephraim and Menashe, and he names them after, he is the one that names them himself, and he names them to reflect something that happened in his life. Harisa Revisa, I multiply. So in other words, he names them, and it's something that becomes his domain. And the question that struck me, why is there, first of all, what is the significance of a parent naming a child? And second of all, why would there be a transition where at the beginning of the Torah, the person who names the child is the mother, and then suddenly in Egypt, and then Moshe Rabbeinu was also, he names his children after events that take place in his life. Why is there this transition? So what occurred to me as a possibility, what I'd like to suggest, and I think the idea is certainly a true idea, whether it's shot is a different story. I'll let other people determine that. But I think the idea, what could be explained is as follows, that in the beginning, when the Jewish people were just commencing, they were just literally just coming together and becoming a nation. When they came down to Egypt, they weren't a nation, they were a family. There were 70 souls that came down to Egypt. That's not a nation. 70 souls is a family. It was just a very large family. And the truth is, there are larger families than that nowadays. So that was a family that came into Egypt. But when they left Egypt, hundreds of years later, they didn't leave a family, they left a nation. Which means that Egypt served as an incubator of sorts. That transition, and the transition that took place in Egypt was that of turning them from a family to that of a nation. So I think what could be suggested as a possible answer is that when they were a family, the person who has the greatest influence on the family is the mother. The person who nurtures, who gives it the emotional well-being, the emotional structure to be able to thrive and become the person that he wants to become, or she wants to become in the future, is the mother. So in the development stages of the Jewish people, when they were first a family, it was the mother's role to nurture and develop the family so that it becomes, it matures beyond that of a family. But once they left Egypt, or when the transition started to take place, which I believe took place by Yosef Atzadik, Joseph was the first person to be the first man to name his child. At that point, it was no longer shaping a family, it was shaping a nation. And the role of leaders of a nation, or if you will, let's just talk about direction, but it's a different role than that of nurturing a family, is the role that's been traditionally given to the father. And I believe that's why Yosef, and from now on, once they became a nation, then it was the role of the father to imbue a sense of direction, a sense of leadership, and a sense of a role which is different than that of the mother into the child, and that's why the fathers are the ones that at that point started naming the children. So we named our son Daniel Tzvi, and actually we've gone through so many names back and forth. At the moment when it was time to give the name, I almost gave the wrong name. And I don't know what would have happened at that moment. But thank God I gave the right name. I was almost imagining the way I would have known whether it was right or not is if I would have heard a cry from above. Stop everything! Thank God the right name came out of my mouth. Daniel Tzvi is a amalgamation of two names. One name was chosen by me and one name was chosen by Shira. Tzvi was named after my grandfather, my father's father, the child's great-grandfather, who was killed in the Holocaust. And we felt that we wanted to give him a lasting legacy to continue the line that was cut off at that point. And and Danielle was just another life. But that's and I want to give a bracha to the baby that in the same vein that a mother names the child for the purpose of nurturing it and developing and imbuing within herself a sense of emotional stability and well-being and wholesomeness, and the father would name the child for the sense of giving it a direction and a place among the Jewish people as a leader of the Jewish people. I hope that this child will Be'ezus Hashem, be imbued with both of those values and combined into a wonderful role model.
Amen.
Mazel tov, mazel tov.